I'm Julian Assange.
Roger, I'll get you in constraint.
Editor of WikiLeaks. We've exposed the world's secrets.
These documents belong to the United States government.
Been attacked by the powerful.
The United States strongly condemns.
Hey, quit asking questions.
We broke the law.
Illegally shoot the son of a...
For 500 days now, I've been detained without charge. But that hasn't stopped us.
Mike dead.
Today, we're on a quest for revolutionary ideas that can change the world tomorrow. During the last year, the Middle East has been shaken by rebel movements, and Tunisia is the country where it all started. Today, I talk to the first president of the new Tunisia, Moncef Marzouki. A medical doctor and human rights activist by training, Marzouki is cut from a very different cloth to his flamboyant and corrupt predecessor, Ben Ali. Exiled and imprisoned under the Ben Ali regime, Marzouki is considered to have the greatest moral authority of all Arab leaders. But I wonder, how long can it last? The transformation of Tunisia is far from complete, and President Marzouki must now face the realities of power. Mr. President, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you, Mr. Assange?
It is very nice to see you.
You know, I have always been very admiring of the job you have done, and I think really I wish you the best, you know, and if you never have some problems, you will be welcome in Tunisia.
Thank you. So you were in prison back in 1993, and I was in prison in 2010. But this experience was very interesting for me, how to survive solitary confinement. And I think perhaps everyone should go through this experience just once. Can you tell me how you survived prison?
Well, you know, I just spent 4 months in solitary confinement. So, but Hamadi Jbali, which is the prime minister in Tunisia, spent more than 10 years in solitary confinement, and I always admired him. I never understood how he could, you know, survive to this kind of experience. But because after just 4 months, I was just talking to myself. You know, I really got crazy. I went crazy because, you know, when you have just to talk to yourself and to be alone with yourself all this time, it's a terrible experience. This is why I think it's a kind of psychological torture, and so many people said, look, you have never been tortured in prison, and I used to say, no, I was under torture, but it was another kind of torture, and probably one of the worst. I think that more than 30,000 people have been tortured here in Tunisia, and I was angry for them, you know. And I was angry also for this people who can order torture and then go back to home and play with their children and listen to music and, you know, have a normal life. And I never understood how can you, you know, accept to do things like this and be sure that you are still a human being. So, How can you survive to this kind of experience? I think when you know this, when you know that you are fighting for human rights, for good values, then you can have enough resistance, you know, to tackle the situation.
These people who took action against you and your friends in Tunisia under the Ben Ali regime, the former head of intelligence, for example, do you meet them now that you are president?
Yes.
And what do they say? Do they apologize?
No, they don't apologize. They all say, look, we obey to orders. We are just civil servants, and this for me is completely unacceptable, you know, because I think that everybody has his own will, and that he has to face his own responsibility. And it's too easy to say I was just obeying to orders. And I can't accept this kind of excuse, you know, because it signs also the fact that those people are not only cowards, cruel, but also they don't have any kind of dignity, any kind of honor, you know. We have to accept your own responsibility and to say, look, I did it, but sorry, I was wrong, but I never heard any one of them saying, sorry, I was wrong.
You said that the first victim of a dictatorship is its intelligence services. What did you mean by that?
I think because those people, because they just accept to obey the dictator, they give up everything, their humanity, their honor, and their just for being there, you know, for sharing the power, and that they are also the victims of the system. And you probably know that the people, you know, perpetrating torture, they always end in very sad situations. Some of them are become ill. Some of them commit suicide. And I think torture destroys not only the people who are submitted to torture, but also the people torturing other people. So yes, it's terrible things for both sides, you know, for the people committing torture and the people submitted to torture.
In the United States, we have an alleged source, the alleged source of the diplomatic cables, which included material that came out in Tunisia about Ben Ali. His name is Bradley Manning, and he was in solitary confinement for 10 months. What do you say about the United States and its role, once leading human rights and now engaged in torture?
Well, when you have torture under dictatorship, it seems so normal, you know. Of course, it's not normal, it's horrible, but when you have this kind of problems under a democratic state, and when you face people, you know, coming from this government talking about human rights and so forth, it seems so ridiculous, you know. I remember 4 years ago, I was invited to Washington by an NGO to talk about human rights in Tunisia, and I was invited to meet some important person in the White House dealing with human rights issues. And I said, no, I'm not going to meet this person because it would be ridiculous to talk with this guy, knowing very well, you know, that he was probably implicated in the Guantanamo problem. You cannot talk, you cannot take seriously somebody who was implicated in torture in his own country, and then this guy is going to give you some lesson about how to promote human rights in Tunisia. This is why I didn't accept to meet him.
What is the status now of the intelligence services in Tunisia? As you are head of the armed forces, you are commander-in-chief of the armed forces, are you also head of the intelligence services?
It's a very difficult situation because we have to tackle the problem very cautiously, you know. We have to remove them one by one, and but the most important thing for me is to, you know, we are going to face some hard issues like the Salafist movement, you know, the extreme right-wing movement here in Tunisia, and they can be a danger to democracy. And we have to tackle the problem from the political point of view. We have to discuss with them and so forth, but some of them are not accepting to have any kind of political discussion, and some of them are going to present a kind of threat against democracy. So when I talk with the police and the army leaders, I said, look, we have to take this problem very cautiously, but please, no more torture and no more unfair trial like we have had under the dictatorships. We have to take this problem very seriously, but to stick on the human rights values. They watched me very, you know, wondering if I was serious, and I said, yes, I am serious. Yes, I am serious. No more torture in Tunisia.
Have you seen your own intelligence file kept by Ben Ali now that you are president, the record of spying on you?
Yes, I'm very curious about having this file, but in fact, I didn't have time. But I have, you know, got some files about political opponent here now to the system, and I said I'm not going to work with this kind of card. I'm not going to threaten this guy with this kind of tools. You know, I don't want to know about what happened. I'm not interested in threatening, my political opponent by the same tools that was used against me.
So you think as WikiLeaks, as a publisher, of course, we saw what happened in Egypt when the Amdawa, the Egyptian Secret Service, was looted, and these files came out and started to describing what was really happening there. And as someone who was following this revolution in Egypt very, very closely and trying to get out material about Mubarak and Suleiman and so on, I knew the Egyptian revolution had succeeded in a very important way when the archives of the Amdawa finally came out. That was the end of the secret police, or a new chapter in the secret police. It seems to me that is the true way to make sure that one cannot go back, is to reveal the inner secrets of the previous regime to everyone, so that everyone may take part in them, even if this creates some kind of conflict in the society. Will you open the Tunisian archives?
Yes, to historians. Yes, to historians, because I think we have to. It's our duty, to know what happened. But I am not interested in having, in knowing who wrote about me, and it's useless. It's. I would like to have the general picture. What happened exactly? How was the system? But I'm not interested in, convicting people and saying you have done this and you have done that, and because it could be very, very dangerous. It's important to know, to remember, but sometimes it's also important to not know and to forget.
Is there pressure on you from other people in the Tunisian government to keep these files closed? No, there is no pressure. This is my choice. My choice is to be very careful, because once again we have to know, but we have also to forget and to forgive. You said before that there are certain red lines about information, that sometimes truth is good, sometimes truth is bad. And recently, the Tunisian internet has been censoring some web pages. But in order to censor even one web page, you must spy on every request that someone is making to see if you should deny it. Do you think that this is right, that is the correct line?
I think censorship on the internet is useless. First, it's useless, impossible, and counterproductive. As a human rights activist, I prefer the side effect of total freedom of expression to the good effects, if I may say, to the censorship. So I always said I am against any kind of censorship on internet or on any other way of expression.
I spoke 2 weeks ago to Hassan Nasrallah, and I asked him why was there a difference between his position for Syria and Tunisians' position for Syria. There seems to be a switch. Hassan Nasrallah is soft on Syria. Tunisia is soft on Bahrain. Tunisia is hard on Syria, and Hassan Nasrallah is hard on Bahrain, on the Bahraini government and the abuses happening there. Why is this?
I mean, the dictatorship that the Syrian people is suffering from is exactly the same that in Tunisia before the revolution. And this is why we feel very close to the Syrian people. We understand that what they are feeling, because they are fighting against corruption, against brutality, against the state of fear. And we feel very, very close to them, because Sometimes we feel that we have also some responsibility, because I can say that if we didn't have the revolution here in Tunisia, probably it wouldn't happen in Syria or in Egypt. So we feel this kind of responsibility. We feel very close, we understand them, and we feel that their fight for democracy, for human rights is our own, and we have to support them. And we have to forget about this, Nasrallah and the people like him, think that Syria is because he's, against Israel, they can forgive to this dictatorship everything. But here in Tunisia, we don't have this problem. We are not interested in the fight between Israel and Syria. What is important for us is that this people is suffering from what we suffered so much from, and this is why we totally support Syria, the Syrian people against his dictatorship, as well as we fight against our own. So I can't understand that here in Tunisia, because we have some people here in Tunisia supporting the Syrian dictatorship, saying it's a patriotic dictatorship, and we do know that there is no patriotic dictatorship. There is no good dictatorship. The dictatorship is dictatorship, corrupted, brutal, and against his people. I can't understand the position of Nasrallah. I can tell you that Nasrallah was very, very popular after them, in 2006. Because of the battle against Israel, but now his popularity is completely finished. Here in Tunisia and in the whole Arab world.
You have offered the ruler of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, asylum in Tunisia, but is that really a credible offer?
What's important for us is that the bloodshed ends in Syria. This is the most important thing. This is why I said, look, we have the Yemeni scenario. It could be a good solution for the Syrian people. And they said, why this guy does go to Russia? And the Russians said, we are not interested in having him. And a journalist asked me, would you be interested in having this man if? And I said, of course, if this could be a solution. But I know, probably, also that Assad would never ask asylum in Tunisia. So it's not a credible question and not a credible position. Of course, he will probably flee to Russia or to any other country, but never to Tunisia.
You held this conference recently in Tunisia, the Friends of Syria, which included, and coming to that was Hillary Clinton and many other powerful people from the West and from the region. Information that we released recently showed that the US security sector is of the belief that there are US special forces already in Syria and that arms and money flow into Syria to the Syrian resistance. You have said that you do not believe in foreign intervention for Syria, and you do not believe that Tunisia should supply arms to the Syrian resistance. But what about intelligence support? What about training, weapons training within Syria? Will Tunisia also offer a base to the Syrian opposition?
As I told you, we are not supporting any kind of foreign intervention in Syria. I do believe that giving weapons to Syrians would lead to civil war. I think it's not a good choice. I still believe that the only solution must be political, and that we have to find a common ground between opposition and the regime. I still believe that the only solution is the Yemeni scenario. This is my position, and this is the position of Tunisia, and of course we are against any kind of intervention, whether it comes from.
Your party received 8.7% of the vote during the Tunisian election, and the more Islamic party received 37% of the vote during that election. But you personally have 60% approval by the Tunisian public. What percent of power do you think you have?
Let me tell you first that in the West, people think that Tunisia or in Egypt, the political Islam is prevailing on democracy. And it's exactly the contrary. I think that we, here in Tunisia, the central part of the spectrum, Islamist part, the central part of the spectrum, Islamist spectrum, is now part of the democratic system and democratic game. So I can say that democracy prevails on Islamic movement because the Islamists became Democrats, and we didn't, as a secular, we didn't become Islamists. So this
there is a move.
Important because I'm very surprised the way that the Western people are looking to Tunisia or to Egypt, saying, look, now Islamists are, in the government and they have the majority in the parliament. Yes, they have the majority in the parliament, but in a democratic parliament, and they were elected by democratic elections. And now they are playing their part of the democratic game. This is why I can say that democracy prevails after the revolution and not the Islamist movement, even if the Islamists were elected more than the seculars in the government. This is very, very important. As far as I'm concerned, I think the most important thing, the power I have is a symbolic one, because here in Tunisia, I'm supposed to be the president of all Tunisians, Islamist seculars, and I'm trying to play this role of being the president of all Tunisia, having discussion with all political parties, trying to get people closer, and this is very, very important. And this is not even known that this is the most important function that I have.
So I imagine this is very hard for you. The way I see things and the leaders that I have dealt with, and in my own position also, there are so many forced moves that one has to suffer. One is forced by a situation or limited ability to act in a certain way, even though your conscience wants to act in another way. Were you surprised by the lack of power in becoming president, the lack of ability to push the program you wanted to push, the compromises you had to make?
Yes, I think, I'm discovering that the fact to be the head of state doesn't mean that you have all the power. And my frustration is now probably the most important feeling that I have every day. I can just give you one example. Now we are tackling a huge problem of Baghdadi al-Mahmoudi. He is in Tunisia having a hunger strike because he is asking for his release. But I can't release him because Libya is asking for him, and we have a lot of common interest with Libya. But giving back this man to Libya means that he could have an unfair trial. And I told my Libyan friend that the honor of Tunisia and my self-honor as human rights activist, I can't just give this man to Libya. But I'm facing huge pressure from outside and inside the country to give this man to Libya. And I have every day to say no, we have to stick to our position. And it's very difficult, to conciliate the human rights activist opinions and the duty of head of state.
What else has changed for you?
Well, I don't think I'm still the same person. I'm still the human rights activist. I still believe in my values, and I try to be faithful to all these values. So I think I'm not going to change. I will stick to my opinions. Of course, it's sometimes very difficult because you have to. I have always to remember that I'm head of state and that I have to be very careful when I talk. And this is sometimes very painful. But I'm still, as I told you, I'm convinced that I have to be faithful to my values, and people are expecting me to be the same person. And I would try. I'll try to be the head of state of Tunisia, but also the human rights activist I was always.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
As I told you, I'm very grateful to all what you have done for promoting human rights, truth, and I admire and support your efforts. And please, I wish you all the best. I hope to see you once in Tunisia. If you can come, you will be welcome here in this new democratic country.
Thank you, and thank you for the crew at both ends for arranging this. Good luck.
Thank you. So, goodbye and good luck.